the storytelling element, it's such a critical part of any business. We're building this again because it's something that's so like near and dear to our hearts that it's easy to tell the story.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Something New, the podcast where we talk about interesting things going on in tech for people building something new. Or at least people aspiring to build something new. I'm Lior.
And I'm Steph.
Think of us as a bit of a technical how I built this, but maybe a little bit less Guy Raz and a little bit more Guy Riz.
This is the peak, and then we're going downhill from here.
I'm using my podcast voice.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, Steph. How's it going?
It's good. Well, I just saw you last night at your happy hour, which was very fun, by the way.
It was a great time. Did it with Workbench and some other pre-seed firms in New York. Workbench did a great job kind of organizing everything. I did nothing.
Yeah, I could tell given that you showed up literally 2 minutes before they introed you as well.
Hey, whoa, that was between us. I snuck in. Anyway.
I noticed.
Yeah.
No, it was great though. Very chill, unpretentious, which I really liked actually, which was super fun. Oh my God. I have a funny story to tell you.
What's that?
At one point you were talking to someone who I actually knew, and I actually went up to after to apologize for interrupting your conversation. But I had the weirdest, this just like speaks to like tech is too small and I have a horrible memory and need to fix that, but that's like a whole other story. So I see this guy, and I'll just use names because who cares? Probably they won't even hear it. But do you know Julian Weiser from On Deck?
I know him a little bit.
He has a very distinct look also. He has like the long hair, curly hair, or like wavy hair with like very distinct looking glasses. And I've met him once, like a very long time ago. And then we've been in communications like via email, a Zoom here or there, phone call, things like that, because for a very long time and still, whatever, if you're on deck a lot, convince Julian to use pins and you all can invest together. But anyway, we've been talking a lot about that for a long time.
Right. Makes sense.
So I see this guy at your event and I'm like, oh, that's Julian. Like, guy looks exactly like Julian.
I thought he was. That's why I like it took
oh
me a
my
second.
God. Thank you that it wasn't just me.
No. I actually know what you're talking about because Julian had said hello to one of my friends.
My God.
And I was like, oh, you know this person. And then this person I was talking to was like, no, I don't. I was like, wait, what? Am I just going
so validated. Thank you. Because I literally, you're going to die. I went up to this guy because I'm like, oh, this is definitely Julian, whatever. So I go up to him and I literally tap him on the shoulder. He turns around. I see his name tag and I'm like, oh my God.
Were they both there?
No, they weren't. It was no. That was just, I don't want to say this other guy's name because he's
No, it's not. Yeah.
I see his name tag. I will say that it also begins with a J. So that's like even fucking more confusing. And I realized, oh my God, this guy doesn't look familiar because he's Julian. He's my ex's friend who I've met probably like 4-ish times over the last like year plus that we've been together or we're together. And I was like, oh my God. And so he immediately recognizes me. We get into this conversation and I'm just like, oh my God. And so he's
wow.
It was incredibly awkward because I was like, I was like, should I explain to him that I thought he was someone else? But no, but now I know who he is. Like, whatever.
I will vouch for you. I would. I'm the first person that's down and game to throw you under the bus. But in this situation, I got your back.
Same. Oh my God, thank you so much. I feel so validated. I was so embarrassed. Anyway, and then this is unrelated, but another funny thing that happened to me last night. So after I left your happy hour to go to this zipline party that I mentioned.
Oh yeah.
There was no zip line. I was very sad. Anyway, it was a happy hour.
It was a rumor. There was a rumor about a zip line.
Maybe it was in the building and they just didn't want to bring us down. I don't know. But anyway, I told you I left for this happy hour with other founders that I was told there would be a zip line. But it was so funny. So it's this like founder community that I guess I just joined or was accepted to, whatever. And they, I go and I'm like one of maybe like 5 new people of a group of like 20-ish. And so they're like, oh, like new people, like introduce yourself with like a fun secret. So I go like second or something and I'm like, fun secret? Like what on earth could I like? I was like, a fun secret. I don't have any fun secrets. So I'm standing there like literally trying to think of something. And I think this guy was like really trying to help me. He's like, this girl's struggling. Like, let me try to give her a layup. He's like, wait, aren't you the girl that like used to be cool on Twitter? And I literally like
What?
to. I was like, used to.
Wow.
So that ended up being my fun fact. I'm like a washed up Twitter
Twitter.
personality.
Oh my God. First of all, I think you're just hitting your prime, but that
I
is
can start posting again. That was like the kick in the butt that I needed. But
wow. What an SOB. No,
yeah,
for sure. No, it's like the center of your dartboard when you're like whatever, like typing your next snarky tweet. Will be this
100%.
guy's face.
Oh, absolutely. Haters are motivation. No, he was actually
Wow.
nice,
What an
but
eventful night you had.
well, he's having a worse week than I
Oh
am.
my God. What a transition.
Well, no, I was literally just, I know we were talking about the whole MKBHD drama. And so I was like
Yeah.
scrolling through Twitter this morning, like looking at all the feedback from the launch and stuff, since I had only seen like bits and pieces of it. Wow, things have escalated. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts? Or
Totally. Well,
why don't you explain the situation as well?
yeah. So, Marquise Brownlee is a influencer. He reviews tech products. He was probably like of recent memory most famous for kind of doing the takedowns, especially or the takedown, especially of Humane. He also did some other ones of other kind of wearable AI products as well. And he's pretty savage about these takedowns. Like he, to his credit, I guess, like tries to come in and to ostensibly with like a good attitude about these products, but if they are not good, he definitely like is savage about it.
Mhm.
And so he decides in the past week or so to release this like iPhone wallpaper app, which charges users like $50 a month. And it's something that would have
Well,
been
it's like $50
cool.
a month. It's
Sorry,
like,
$50 a year. Sorry, $50 a
okay,
year.
okay.
It is
Yeah.
$50. Yeah. $50 a year. Yeah, I guess $600 a year would be a lot, but
That would be a business.
that would be business. And also I would be praising him instead of giving him crap now. But and then so the kind of irony, well, one, like this is like a business that you would have started that might have been kind of interesting in like, I don't know, like 2010. And two, like the whole app had all sorts of issues and like was like location tracking and doing all these kind of like sketchy things. And like clearly it was like rushed and it was like kind of a cash grab for him.
Mhm.
But to me, it's one of like the like of the month or so, not to be as savage, not to be so savage, but I guess I'll just be as savage as he is on videos. It's one of like the worst tech decisions I've seen in at least the past couple months. Like you're this
I can
person
see
who's
it.
developed a brand around reviewing products and you release clearly a cash grab product that is terrible. Like kind of what were you thinking? Um,
Okay,
but
wait. When you say terrible, though, I haven't downloaded the app, so that's also on me.
yeah.
Right. And obviously, like the screenshots that you see online are selective. Like, for example, people were like posting pictures of like an orange background that you could literally, you know what I mean? Like, I don't,
Right.
it takes zero talent to take to make.
Correct.
Is it really that bad? Like, is the quality of the art on the platform really not worth
Well,
any?
it's like you could just go to Google and, get one of these wallpapers and it does the same exact thing. And so charging your users who might not know any better, like $50 a year for something like this, the only way you can get standard definition photos is if you like pay for the subscription. I mean, it's a wallpaper app and it's a cash grab app. And so it's not, I wouldn't even have a problem with anyone doing it, period. I just have a problem with someone who's like does all these takedowns of various tech products and all of a sudden like releases his own and then like it's clearly like a
Okay, I have a different take on this.
yeah.
So which is strange because usually I'm pretty on the same page with
Yeah.
you, which is actually very strange, which I don't know why that happens a lot, but anyway,
Yeah, there's definitely times when it doesn't, but
times.
yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my whole take on him is like I think he's getting a lot of hate right now for being a critic of other people and then not being able to like be a man in the arena. Like all the memes online are like,
Yeah,
oh, the
yeah,
man is
yeah.
back to the arena and like what he's built is terrible. I don't think that's a fair criticism because like if you're saying that only you know like I well, whatever. I'm not like I don't think everyone's opinion is valid, but I think for him specifically, my understanding of his content and like why people respect his content is he is representing like the everyday consumer with an extra knowledge and like vantage point in like what tech offers as a consumer, and he's able to therefore like give a very honest and critical or fair review of a consumer's uh usage with a product and like whether it's worth their money and time, right? So I actually don't think that someone needs to be like the most amazing builder or founder to play that role really, really, really well. So I actually don't think that's a fair criticism of like comparing his business to, you know, our Rabbit or whatever, or what's the other one? Humane or
Humane,
whatever.
yeah.
Like to, I was like, I don't really know. I was like, I don't know if that's like a fair critique in my mind. Like, do you have to, like, I think he's an exceptional brand and creator. Could he have done more with his brand? Absolutely, sure. But I don't think that it's in it of itself is like the fair critique that I would necessarily find valid that a lot of people online seem to have.
Yeah.
And then my second take is so he is like a broad, at the end of the day, he's a broad mass consumer creator. He has
Mhm.
millions of followers and subscribers. And yes, yeah, he does have an intelligent, or at least an overlap of an intelligent consumer base, which I think
Mhm.
is rare, right? I feel like in my mind, at least, there's creators who are usually like mass audience, very large, have millions of followers. And then there's like more like niche but intelligent folks like Lenny or Packy or whatever.
Mhm.
I feel like this guy, I think is an interesting like Venn diagram overlap of both. Like people in our world like watch his videos actively and respect them significantly. I
Yeah.
can't really think of many folks who, you know, have both of those. So I
Totally.
will say thinking about like the type of business that he could build that would be really great for his audience, I actually didn't think this was a horrible idea. Like the idea itself, not the execution, but more like, okay, what's a mass consumer, high margin, easy to build business that would appeal to my audience of folks who are avidly, you know, looking at my reviews of mostly phones and tablets and other things? Do I think this is a horrible idea? And like, do I fault him for trying to make money in this way? Like, no. And is it any different than like Mr. Beast, you know, putting out Lunchable, you know, copycats or chocolate bars or whatever? Like, I don't really have a problem with that either. But like,
Yeah.
in my mind, this is just the equivalent of that. He's serving a mass audience focused on tech and electronics and whatever. So I actually didn't think that was that bad. I was
Yeah.
surprised of
Yeah,
that.
I guess the difference between like if you okay, so I think on the kind of creator side, I think he does interesting things. And clearly to your point, he's like crossed a chasm that most people don't,
Yeah.
like in terms of having like a mass audience, but also having like the niche audience as well. That said, it's kind of just like Mr. Beast doesn't critique other streamers. And so when he and hadn't like he had created products before. And so when he's like creating his net new products, it doesn't feel like he's throwing stones from a glass house, which I think is what everyone's reacting to. It's like if you're going to be so critical of consumer products that are at the outset, which I didn't like that part of his shtick at all, because I think a lot of things are early and the first version of a lot of products are bad. So I didn't like that piece of his kind of creation, but I'm like, okay, I get it. Like that can't exist. But then if you're going to do that, then you got to make sure that the products that you build are, I think, pretty buttoned up and tight, or else everyone's going to call you out for the same thing that you're calling out everyone else for. And so I think it's more just the hypocrisy, which is what everyone's reacting to. And I think like as a creator, you got to be really careful about about your brand. And I think that was I think it was a mistake for him at the very least, whether or not you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it was a mistake.
I so I don't know. So my whole thing with
Mhm.
this is like this guy's content literally is about reviewing tech products. Like to my understanding, and actually maybe I've only seen some of his videos, so it's not like I'm an expert on his content. My take on his videos is that he's criticizing the product, not like the founders, right? And I understand like a product is like a representation of the founder, and like founders, especially the dialogue that happens on Twitter after, turns into a discussion about the attack on the founder of the company and everything like that, and it becomes
Yeah.
very personal. But my
Yeah.
take, like he's not attacking people or like attacking founders for how they're building their business. He's literally just talking about the one when I saw the review on Rabbit, he's literally just talking about like the user experience of the product. So I
Sure.
think his content and the way that he delivers his critiques, in my opinion, I don't have a problem with that. Do I think it's fair that his um, then if he launches something as a founder, that he will naturally face more criticism and scrutiny because he scrutinizes other people's products? Do I think that's fair? Yes, I do, but I do acknowledge that that is a weird thing that he has to deal with that like Mr. Beast doesn't have to deal with. Yeah. Anyway, we can introduce our guest interview today. Our guest today is Mike Rosenthal, who is the CEO and co-founder of It's Good, which is a company that's reinventing how people save and share specifically their favorite food recommendations, which I thought was really cool. Interestingly, he co-founded the company with John Legend after working on the idea together through COVID 4 years ago. And they raised a $5 million seed round from Lightspeed last year to launch it. And yeah, it was an exciting conversation just to hear from him about transitioning from more of the entertainment world to being a tech founder, how that's really different, what it's like founding a company with a celebrity, and how they kind of ideated and incubated the idea together, raising money, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, welcome, Mike. Awesome, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Of course, happy to be here.
Yeah, well, maybe before we get started and dive in, before It's Good, you were most well known for being a director and photographer, which is, very different background than most traditional tech founders. Like, tell us more about that. You were on America's Next Top Model. Love to hear more about your life before It's Good.
I grew up in LA. My parents are not in the business, but I was around movies since I was a kid and really, really loved movies, still love movies. And I was really into art and computers as a kid and was fortunate that like right around my teenage years is when those two things fused and the visual effects industry became a thing and really exploded. And that was when, Pixar took off and Toy Story came out. And so it was this whole new industry, got to do this. And have always been pretty stubborn, when there's something that I want, and try to figure out a way to get there. And so I figured out a way to get in touch with a bunch of different companies and eventually landed an internship at Warner Brothers, as well as in high school. I went away to college to a small tech school up in the Bay Area of California that was kind of a feeder school at that point for Pixar, and really thought that that was going to be the direction that I went in. And after a number of years while I was in school, I was working at a video game company, really enjoyed the energy of this kind of new industry, but also missed working in real life with people. It can just get just a little bit lonely just being stuck in front of a computer. And at the time, that was before we had LCD screens. So it was all old CRT monitors. And so when you're staring at those for 8-10 hours, it just like does a real number on your eyes. And so I just got to a point where I'm like, you know what, the things that I respond to most in the visual effects side of things was setting up the scene and placing the camera and doing the little characters and lighting it. Maybe I should explore doing this in real life. And I had a friend from high school who went straight from school into the production world. He at that point was working as an AD on a bunch of different movies, and just talking to him about it, he's like, look, I can get you in as a PA in the camera department if you want. And I said, yeah, awesome. Went in PA just on a bunch of crappy movies. And the first time you're on set, if you really love the film business, like the first time you're on set, doesn't matter if it's a crappy movie or an amazing movie, it's just the greatest thing ever. Like it's such a cool environment of really weird people who have all different kinds of disciplines all coming together to work on this one project and work towards this one goal. So eventually that led to I reached out to and was able to get in touch with somebody who I really kind of idolized at that point. He was the cinematographer on Titanic, was pretty legendary, and ended up becoming his apprentice for a number of years. I don't want to ramble too much, but went from film into still photography. The film business is very exciting, but also very punishing. At that point in my life, I just was not like in the right headspace to be doing these like month after month after month after month of these like crazy long crushing days, and found still photography to be similar but different in a way that was a bit more manageable, to where the days were shorter. So yeah, it honestly was really fun. It allowed me to travel quite a bit, and that ended up leading into It's Good. I got to work with a lot of really creative and amazing and inspiring people, and some of those people became good friends, like John. So yeah, it's very different worlds for sure. But Joseph Campbell once said that like when you look back on your life, it looks like this finely crafted novel, where everything just sort of like leads to the next. While you're in it, it doesn't make sense. But looking backwards, it is almost a natural fit to go from like one thing to the next, and to where I am now.
I love that mentality because I feel like you could look at the same person, the exact same path they're taking, and have like a very cynical, negative view, or kind of that beautiful way that you wrapped it up. And I just love the idea that you kind of are very comfortable with starting from the bottom again and reinventing yourself constantly. I think that's really inspiring. Yeah, I'm definitely said I'm curious about, the reason for it's good is very clear in your story. And I'm curious about like the tactical stuff. So you traveled a lot, you've experienced this pain point. Like when did you feel compelled to start It's Good? And I'm curious if it was like a fascination and excitement about becoming a founder and you were kind of trying to search for the right idea, or was it more like you felt so compelled about what It's Good was solving and therefore formed an idea around it? I'm curious about that kind of nitty-gritty journey there.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, I mean, it started long before even my like photography and film career took off. And I was fortunate that, so I grew up, again in LA where we don't really have a whole lot of history. And in school, I didn't have a history teacher that I resonated with, that excited me about history. And it always just felt like a really dry and, boring subject that was really more about memorizing like names and dates, which I'm not great at. But I was fortunate that I think it was senior year of high school. One of my English teachers, who also was not particularly inspiring, but she was crazy enough to take a bunch of high schoolers to Europe. And that to me was just this incredible, like blew the doors off of, everything I thought about history and literature and just culture in general. And immediately, walking through the, streets of Paris, and you see neighborhoods that are, commissioned by Napoleon, and you visit these, parks that are hundreds of years old. I knew immediately, I'm like, okay, this is what I need to do to figure out who I'm supposed to be, what my place is in the world. And it just felt right to be out of my comfort zone. Like I want to do more of this. I need to go, taste, smell, experience all the, these other cultures. So I started backpack as soon as I turned 18. I had another friend who was kind of in a, similar mindset, wanted to just go explore and see the world. Didn't have a lot of money, stayed in hostels, slept in fields, crashed on people's couches. And at the time, the internet was not a thing really yet. This is like the late 90s. But there were things called BBSs. It was like a precursor to the internet, and these bulletin boards that would then kind of connect with each other. And so we could find other kids that were just like nerdy like us in Germany or in the Netherlands. And, many times they'd say, "Oh, my parents are out of town. You can sleep on my couch." And it wasn't creepy or weird at that time. And so we'd go to like, a different country, and we'd have a local kid just kind of taking us around. And at the same time, I'd travel with these books, which Lonely Planet was new. Back then it was for like a young traveler. And the book would say, this is the coolest cafe in the old square. And then the local would say, "Oh, fuck that place. That was cool 2 years ago. I'm going to take you to a real place." And so that was this sort of like realization, oh, the real place, how do I find these real places everywhere I go? And that would be through a local, or I would go to a bar and I'd talk to the bartenders and I'd ask them, "Where do you guys go when you get off of work?" I'd go to a restaurant. "Where do you guys go to eat? What's your favorite food?" And so it became this pattern of, and sort of an understanding that there were two paths. One was the path well traveled, and nowadays that would be, what's Yelp telling you is the best place to go eat, or what does Instagram say is like the spot that you got to go see. And then the other is this, kind of hidden gem path, or the sort of like undiscovered, or even if it's not necessarily undiscovered, even if it's known, it's like, okay, maybe this isn't the most well lit or the brightest painted spot. Maybe the service is a little bit different than some of these other places that are geared towards, tourists, but this might be an incredible, authentic experience that, begins this kind of culinary journey, or is maybe the first place in this amazing night that you're about to have with a bunch of cool people doing like weird stuff. those are the things that the real memories are built around. And so I made, a point every time I would travel to try to find those real places. And I would take a matchbook, or I'd take, a business card or anything I could as just a little souvenir and a record of where I went. And inadvertently, I became the list keeper for my social group. And so as my friends would start to travel, they'd ask me for my London list and my Paris list. And then over the years, it, started to get a little more diversified. Like, we're going to the Greek islands. What were those places that you went to? When the iPhone first came out and suddenly we had like an interactive map in our pocket, we had, social media became a thing. We could connect with all these different people. And so it makes sense that Yelp was really built around, okay, how do we collect all of this information into one site and then you figure out what to do with it? There was, again, no like sort of social overlay of any sort. So I kept thinking like, okay, there's going to be somebody has to solve this. This is a problem, a pain point, whatever you want to call it, for people who travel. If you're really looking for something special, you can do all the research in the world, but ultimately, if a friend of yours says, "Oh no, you got to go check this place out. It's gonna be amazing," you'll cast aside all of that other research and just go try that place because there's that inherent trust with people that you know. And now through social media, there's this inherent trust of taste from people that you feel like that you've gotten uh, to understand through perhaps years of following them, through your phone or through TV. Um, so again, expecting somebody to build something that really is catering to this need, and it just never happened. I think that all of the bigger companies have that you can kind of solve this issue in a lot of different ways, but just nothing has been built specifically for this kind of person looking for this kind of thing. And so around, it's about 4 years ago so my wife, she's an amazing hairstylist turned female founder. Our
I'm a
lives
fan, by
were
the way. I would want to play it cool and pretend like I don't know who she is, but no, I do know, and her products are very cool. And yeah,
cool.
it'd be
Awesome. Yeah.
hard to find someone who doesn't know about her and her line. So that's awesome.
Yeah. She's amazing. So, our lives before we even knew each other, very much, about travel. Once we got together, our relationship was really built on travel and, constantly moving around both for work and for pleasure. And many times we would have something would start as a work trip and then we'd tack on extra time and we'd go to different places. And but then we've also been fortunate to, work with and become friends with some really interesting folks. And two of our best friends are John and Chrissy. And so we, traveled quite a bit with them, really all around the world. And so being able to really see they're looking for the same kinds of things as well. They have access to everything. They can walk into any restaurant anywhere in the world at any point in time, and there's always a table available, which is kind of amazing. But being celebrities, being these known people, everyone assumes, oh, go to the fancy spot, go to where the celebrities go. And in some cases, that might be the right fit for what, they're looking for at that particular moment. But most of the time they want the dirty street taco, that's amazing. They want the handmade pasta that's amazing. Chrissy wants the weird ice cream place that's mixing in breakfast cereal, like the things that may not be the most obvious. And so at dinner one night, I was talking to John about just this concept of a platform where, you choose the people who matter to you, and then you get their recommendations, and the people who you would normally have to text and ask for their list. What if there was a way for them to save that list and you could just go look at their profile and see their favorite places, or you could even just show up in a new city and immediately have a bunch of places that have been recommended by the people who matter to you. And he's like, dude, I would use that. The other artists I know would use that. The people I tour with, would use something like that. Let's build it together. And so that's really where, it's good started. And neither one of us really having a full understanding of what it takes to build a platform. Like I'd taken, years of programming as a kid, but, I'm not an engineer myself. I can't really remember any of what I used to do. but kind of understood the basics of how things generally fit together. And we just kind of set about to, all right, let's build a little prototype. We'll self-fund it. Okay, we need somebody to build it. Let me ask around and we'll get some recommendations. So it's really just started as this little thing. We were working with a solo developer who was really moonlighting for us. Built a simple product that worked. It wasn't super flashy, and it wasn't you know necessarily something like incredibly visual, but it was like a great proof of concept. And from there we decided, okay, if we're really going to build something that can achieve any kind of scale, or something that we would want to really broadcast out, let's try to raise some money, and let's try to put a company together. That was honestly like right around the time the pandemic hit, which was, you know it just changed every dynamic in all directions. For him, he couldn't tour. For me, all photo shoots and video shoots, film shoots, everything was shut down. At first, of course, everybody expected it to be a 3-week thing that would pass, and then that turned into 3 months, and almost 3 years, let's say. Um, so suddenly we had a lot of time to put into hobbies, and at the same time, the financial markets completely changed, and suddenly there was all of this money that was just being thrown around into a lot of different ideas. So we really did benefit from having the time, uh, and the kind of freedom to put our attention into this, as well as a market that was honestly a lot easier to get into than the market is now, which has now kind of become the opposite. But then the flip side of that was hiring was incredibly difficult. Um, Everything was being done remotely, which was new. So even just working through Zoom was a new thing. And Zoom, especially, even in the beginning, like that was also still kind of buggy. Like all of this stuff that we now consider standard. The fact that I can see you guys, through a computer monitor, like this was just the beginning stages of that. So how do you interview people remotely? How do you set your expectations if you're working across a lot of different time zones? How do you vet people properly? How do you compete with the bigger tech companies who, at that point, the salaries for people were so astronomical, not even because they needed to hire those people, but it almost became this competitive race to see who could hire more people and keep them from going to a competitor. So, we were literally competing with these really well-established big tech companies trying to hire engineers, and they were just scooping them all up just because. Like, they didn't even really need them, but they're like, we'll just hire them all anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of those people ended up getting let go afterwards. But, at the time, like, we really struggled to find the right combination of people. And then on top of that, even figuring out like what's the size and shape of this company, like what are the roles we really need to hire for? How do we, not having done this before, um, what are the holes that we might not even be aware of that we should be, trying to fill? So it took us a while. We started with contracted design and contracted engineering. We then tried to bring both in-house. We struggled on the engineering side for a while. We went through recruiter, thought we had found, the right kind of, leadership for the engineering team. Turned out not to be a good fit. And so then we were sort of left without real internal engineering leadership for a while. Where we are now, we've got a really good team. We're still, in some cases, we've been, kind of digging ourselves out of some of the tech debt that emerged, a year and a half ago. But I think we're in a place now where we did another re-architecture to try to now clean ourselves and cleanse ourselves and sort of start anew. And it's an exciting place to be, to now feel like, okay, we're a lot of the things that weren't working for us now, we've sort of shed. The team is now working really well together. Um, I have a much better understanding really of what are all the different roles and needs. So it's been an incredible learning experience for me, even just to beyond just team management, but really just kind of understanding, oh, I wish I'd known this earlier. Like, this is what we need to be doing to kind of get us closer to our goals. But I think, with any endeavor, you just have to you take the good, you take the bad, and you just keep going.
I think I counted at least 4 times in which, Mike, you started over. And maybe there's even more that you hadn't even mentioned. And so now, as you're kind of going through the crests and the troughs of kind of starting a business, just curious, like, how did those experiences inform, you as a founder, as you were going through the inevitable, like, peaks and valleys of an early stage startup? Like, how did that impact you in that process?
I mean, I'd like to say it gets easier. It doesn't. There's still sometimes it's peaks and valleys in one day. Sometimes it's peaks and valleys over the course of a week, over the course of a month. The peaks still are really exciting, and the valleys are crushing, and it sucks. Uh, it's hard. It's especially when it's something. Speaking personally, like, this is something I'm really passionate about. I'm building this not because, like, I needed another job, or I, was doing this to try to, like, get some huge, unicorn deal and get my name on a board somewhere. Like, I'm building this because I want to use it. Like, I'm building something because I want it to exist, and because I feel like everybody I talk to wants something like this to exist. Once we started actually, like, building the company for real, and really going full speed towards this goal, we realized, oh man, there's been a lot of companies who have actually come and gone trying to solve the same kind of issue. And there's probably 4 or 5 other companies out there right now that have a similar mission, right? And a similar kind of promise for their users. And I think, we're all kind of going about it in slightly different ways. And I really do believe that we're beyond the point of, when Yelp came around, they were the one solution for everybody. But I don't think that that makes sense anymore. Like, the world is such a big place. There's so many communities, and now we're seeing that the fracturing into all these, like, micro communities, and that even the micro communities are millions of people. It makes more sense to me that we won't see another monolith like Yelp, but we'll actually see, you know, uh, probably a variety of companies that solve things in different ways and really cater to different kinds of communities based on your style and expectations. That still leaves a huge amount of opportunity for every one of those companies to participate. Um, Going through struggles and going through, yeah, the ups and downs are real, and are hard. And in talking to other founders, like, they're going through the same thing, it sucks, but I just
Yeah,
kind
it's
of,
real. Yeah.
yeah, I just try to focus on, like, all right, this is a real life problem. It was here before COVID. It's here after COVID. People are still going through this manual process of asking their friends where they should go. If you're going on a trip, you can spend hours doing research, online, going through tons of different blogs, magazines, Instagram, TikTok, all of that. But again, ultimately, like, if you know somebody who has just gone to the place that you're going to, or lives in the place you're going to, or knows about the place that you're going to, that's going to mean a lot more to you than, a writer that maybe you don't know. And maybe you start with this stuff over here, but ultimately it passes through a filter where you try to end up with something that's trustworthy. And so, at its core, It's Good really is a curation company. And so, we're both through the product and now through some other services, really trying to speed up and make more efficient and make more beautiful and inspiring that process of taking this bulk information and passing it through a filter of trust and curation to then give you something that is usable and hopefully gets you off your phone and into a real life experience as quickly as possible.
I'm curious before we move too much into the product, which I'm excited to dig into, like going back to your like co-founding dynamic with John and kind of the formation of the early team. I'm curious to learn more about that because I feel like it's becoming, I mean, there was already a time in 2021 where I think like the creator economy was really big. And I think even today, actually, there's still a huge amount of like appreciation and a bullish thesis on investing in companies that are co-founded with celebrities because distribution, as you know, in a consumer world is exceptionally hard. And I'm kind of just curious of your thoughts on the hype there and whether you think it's warranted. And curious if there are any like non-obvious things about working with a celebrity that maybe you didn't know until you guys started working together. And acknowledging that you guys are
Sure.
friends, it's probably different than a partnership that happens inorganically, but curious about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think ultimately, like it has to, I think for any kind of partnership to work, and especially if you're, people go to celebrities and then now to influencers because they have a following, right? Which then turns into reach, which turns into like real influence. And especially if you're building a consumer product or anything that relies on community, you have to be able to reach large audiences. In the past, and you look at, even like large companies now that are selling, goods and are trying to reach large audiences, they're spending huge amounts of money for that awareness. And if you don't have, millions or billions of dollars to, put up billboards everywhere and print ads and, influencer marketing, like you'll you'll you have to get scrappy. And so I think for startups, it makes sense to look at, okay, who are we trying to reach? How do we reach that demographic in the most efficient way possible? And what used to be, maybe it's Facebook ads, maybe now it's okay, we'll do some deals with some influencers, or we'll reach out to, maybe there's a celebrity who we know loves a particular lane that aligns with what we're doing, and maybe there's the interests align. But I think it comes down to authenticity. I think that there's been plenty of brands that have either hired celebrities um, as spokespeople, or have kind of brought them in loosely as like kind of co-founders. But if it doesn't feel authentic, and if it's not something that that celebrity is really interested in, it's going to fall flat. They're not going to put their full weight behind it. They're not really going to support it the way that it would need. And I just don't see that succeeding. I think that like consumers in general, they can smell when something doesn't, isn't right. So I think authenticity really is the kind of the first hurdle that you really have to go over or get past to be successful with that kind of relationship. The other is, I think you just have to be realistic with like, okay, who is this person? Again, assuming that this is something that is very much in line with their interests and something that they want to really get behind. Unless it's a pay to play deal where you're just using their likeness, which does happen and in some cases can work. But if you're really trying to build a business with the person, then you want somebody who's going to be reliable, somebody who's going to be a good communicator, somebody who's going to be available. But understanding that, this is not going to be their primary business. Like I knew that, John's not going to be in every meeting, talking about engineering stuff, but he's, big on product, because this is something he uses and wants to use. And is, we're building for us really. So, understanding what are the needs. He is a target user as well as a co-founder. And then also knowing, when we went into this, we knew that our networks were very unique, and was really a big differentiator for the company that no other company has. So how do we leverage that to the best of our ability? So that meant sort of itemizing like, okay, who are the people in our networks that we're close to that we also know are big foodies or big travelers or big, it doesn't benefit us to have a big name on a cap table that doesn't fit. Again, going back to authenticity, like, great. Do we care if there's a name on here for somebody who doesn't care about what we're building? No. So how can we leverage our communities to find those people where it does matter and it does fit with, with their kind of lifestyle already, as well as what are they posting about? Do they post about where they go to eat? Do they post about their travels? Do they post about how do we fit naturally into the things that they're already doing? And so, he's incredibly intelligent, a really good communicator, and, has just a good understanding of just connecting with people. So, we knew that those were going to be a lot of the key things that he would be, doing with and for the company. And then, within our networks, it's, outreach to other interesting people, chefs, athletes, influencers, actors. And then, of course, when we did do our fundraise, he was, very much a part of that as well, because, really ultimately it's us telling the story. So I think just kind of like level setting your expectations, what makes sense for that partner to be doing. It would be a waste of his time and a waste of everybody's time to have him, trying to like grind through some of the technical stuff, where he does shine because this is a fit for him, and a passion for him, he shows up and he crushes it, like he does everything else.
I was curious. I mean, you mentioned like the storytelling, and actually, I think that's what stood out even just earlier on in this interview, like right away. And I just attribute that to probably your background in some ways. But I'm curious about your fundraise in particular. I imagine your guys' storytelling was such a huge kind of like a big reason why people bet on you. And I say that as someone who, you mentioned so many other people who are working on similar ideas. I also like formally tried to work on a travel startup. I feel like a lot of founders have tried something in this world, just haven't even been able to raise money, let alone kind of get to the point that you guys are. And I'm just curious, like, it seems like this is your guys' first fundraise, particularly together. Like, what was that experience like? And yeah, tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, we had no, or at least I personally had no prior experience going through that process before, when we did this. We're not supremely like ego-driven people. So I'm happy to say, like, I don't know this. I don't know what I'm doing here. Somebody help me. Like I'm completely out of my depth. And he's really good as well at saying, like, let's bring in somebody who knows what they're doing. Why spend a bunch of our time to try to get to, 50% when we can get somebody who is at 100% to come in and help us. So we did, quite a bit of outreach. I talked to a lot of people that I knew, if you start with one person, again, talking about trust, you start with one person who's really good at what they do, try to get an introduction to somebody else. Eventually, we found some really, really smart people that invest in a lot of different companies, that have co-founded other companies. And through that network, as those relationships developed, there's one guy in particular who helped kind of, it was almost kind of a consigliere in a sense, getting us through this fundraising process. Looking back on it, again, the market is so different now than it was back then. But we had no frame of reference. So at the time we're like, oh man, this is great. Like, how easy is this? And now it's again very, very different. But
You can just pivot to an AI company, and then you guys will have the same.
Exactly. I
Yeah,
know.
so
Before it was like
Web3
and Web3 and
Honestly, combine
blockchain.
the
Now
two, Mike. Just put
it's an
both together.
AI Web3 blockchain NFT. Yeah. But I think the storytelling element, it's such a critical part of any business. You're never gonna start any endeavor at done, right? At finished. So you have to be able to get people's buy-in. You have to be able to get them to sort of see where you're going and to get excited about that. And that really comes from storytelling. And some of that can be, like us talking right now. Some of that can be through a deck. But Yeah, I think being able to really like effectively tell a story is really, really important. And I think we benefited from something that because it is personal for us, it's not like, oh, we just like found an opportunity in the market and like hey, this is cool. Like we'll make a bunch of money. We're building this again because it's something that's so like
Okay.
near and dear to our hearts that it's easy to tell the story. The things that I draw from, when I talk about what led us to get here, those are some of like my fondest memories, and my like some of the best nights I ever like. I remember, going to Paris, and with people I had just met, and they took me to this, restaurant that was like downstairs in a weird stone basement, and people were like dancing on the tables, and that led to another place, and we ended up at, some party out like, the middle of a forest, and I rode home in the trunk of a car, and then, watched the sunrise in a stranger's apartment. We were all sitting there eating a bowl of pasta at, 6 in the morning. Like that's real.
I just
That all
ordered Mendocino Farms last night, so that's that sounds super
same,
fun.
same,
I
same,
love
same.
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
But then that was like a real experience.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many years ago that was, but like I still feel the same excitement. I still feel the same, like that's something I'll carry with me. And I remember it all started at that one little weird underground restaurant place. So to be able to kind of like hold on to those things and be able to pull that memory and that energy into the storytelling, I think it's different than if I was trying to just sell a product that I didn't really care about.
Curious from the storytelling process, either with the consigliators' help or not, what was something about the story itself that you all told that kind of changed from beginning to end? And curious, like, why did you make that change, if anything at all?
The fact that it is rooted in like in real life problem,
Mhm.
that this is a it's, if we're talking like scales of problems, like it's not the biggest problem that humanity is facing, of course, but like it's a thing that people deal with fairly frequently,
Mhm.
even if you're not traveling, even if you're just trying to find a new date night spot or a new restaurant just opened, you hear about it from a friend. Like this is just stuff that happens all the time. um, so I think our kind of general North Star hasn't really changed at all. It's
Mhm.
all been around this saving organization and sharing of information. What has changed is, okay, it's a great idea right at its core because it's solving a need that we all have. The big questions are, okay, how do you build something like that to solve the problem in a way that people will resonate with? How do you try to convert enough people and try to create a new user behavior, which is really hard? And then how do you build a business around it? Because ultimately it can be the greatest idea ever, but like if it's not something that is a sustainable business, you're basically just building kind of like a feature set that would plug into maybe another product.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think kind of like how we're building definitely has changed a bit, or I mean, it's probably changed quite a lot actually over time. The business model itself has definitely evolved, and has changed as we've gotten even more familiar with the product, with the need, with the audience, as well as the pandemic. And then we're out of the pandemic. Just kidding, we're back. Omicron. It's like restaurants are open, they're closed, they're open, they're closed. Um, New trends. Everybody's traveling again. It's all, going overseas, and people are buying, paying with credit cards. Like just trying to keep a view of like this constantly and rapidly changing world and not shifting our direction too radically, trying to just still stay generally pointed towards our North Star, but adapting to changing conditions and trying to reconfigure the business model and the product to kind of suit what we believe is maybe the next few steps ahead. So the story itself has not really changed a whole lot, but to your point, you were talking about the creator economy, and I think when we started this, there was this thesis around something that explicitly plugged into the creator economy. Now, some of that hasn't changed, right? Like creators are still going out and doing cool stuff and telling their story. And we're now really trying to build in a way where we can plug into and become like the sidecar to any kind of long form content, whether you're a publisher, whether you're a creator, whether you're, a writer, author, or whether you're a hospitality business and you're doing all of this long form content. Like I still love long form content. We're not here to replace any of that, but how do you take that and make it usable? How do you take that long form content, put it in your pocket, and make it something that you can save and share yourself? So if we can become sort of the companion to a lot of that more, fleshed out, longer, beautiful stuff, awesome. We now make that way more usable. It's a win for the reader and the consumer, and it's a win for the creator because now their content becomes even more usable. So there's been adaptations like that. But yeah, I mean, overall, I would say it's still at its core, the need is still there. So we haven't changed too much in terms of like the general direction.
I'm curious. I know we're kind of getting close to time, but you mentioned kind of how much you've learned over the last few years and the iterations you've made. And you mentioned even earlier, like, you're fixing tech debt from a year and a half ago, which like I can relate to. I feel like there's no company or founder that's not fixing mistakes that were established a long time ago. But I'm curious if you were to kind of like restart a company today focused on consumers or giving advice to kind of consumer founders getting off the ground today, what advice like comes top of mind for you as being, really important to share?
Actually, the first thing I'd say is like you're just not going to get everything right. Your first time out the gate, and everybody said that to me too. But it really is true. Like you're gonna learn so much as you go, and then look back on decisions and mistakes or perceived mistakes that you made early on, and just say, "Oh shit, how did I? I could have done that better. Oh, if I could only go back and change something." Uh, but that's just part of the process. I would say surround yourself with people who are way smarter than you. Surround yourself with people who have done stuff like this before. Um, every person in the room is going to have a different opinion. So part of being a founder, in my opinion, part of being a founder is collecting all this information and then assimilating it and trying to figure out what makes sense for you. So surround yourself with really smart people, collect those opinions, but it doesn't mean that everyone is going to be right. And if you try to follow everyone, you're just going to be constantly whipsawing back and forth in different directions. But just, if you don't really have experience in kind of forming a company, like whatever, the current endeavor is, ask people, what are the roles I need to be hiring for? How do I properly vet these people? How do I find these people? Put more time into surrounding yourself with the right people as, again, advisors and employees. Do a lot of user research. I think, we have done quite a bit of user research and are still doing a lot of user research, but I still think that there's always so much more that we could do and should do. And I think the more research you can do ahead of time, the more you can avoid costly mistakes in terms of like building something that doesn't resonate with people, or spending a bunch of time trying to solve a problem that isn't really that important. It just helps prioritize where your time and energy and ultimately money is going. But then ultimately, I'd say like hold on to that thing that made you want to start this in the first place. That's going to get you through hard times because there's going to be hard times. Anticipate, just know that there's going to be times where you feel like everything is awesome. You figured it all out. It's, it's going to be super easy. And then other times where you're like, holy shit, this is crazy. What the fuck did I get myself into? Why, what am I going to do? Holding on to that initial spark is going to be really critical. Don't lose sight of why you're here in the first place. Because when everything else is confusing and chaotic, being able to have that North Star will really be kind of a personal lifeline. And you can just keep going back to like, I'm here because there's a purpose, there's a need, there's a passion. And it might seem like, you know, everything is dark and I don't know where I'm headed, but you know, if you can keep pushing through those dark periods, you'll always find, you know, kind of light on the other side. And that really, you know, you only sustain if you have something to kind of keep your own fire lit. It's a crazy adventure. It's definitely not for everybody, you know. I think if you're getting into it just to make money, I mean, look, this kind of stuff has made people fabulously wealthy. I don't know if it's necessarily made them all happier. So do something that makes you happy. And then, yeah, just try to surround yourself with good people.
Leroy, do you want to kick us off with, or wrap us up with rapid fire?
Yeah. So the intention for these questions is to be able to answer in either a word or a sentence or less. And we'll start with the founder you look up to most.
You know, it's funny. I was kind of thinking about this the other day. I really admire Adam from WeWork. I've never met him before, and I don't know if I hope he's a nice guy. I don't know if he's a nice guy or not, but I admire his ability to tell a story and his passion and, you know, his vision, the fact that he's held on to like his beliefs so hard and has been able to kind of sell and resell and resell. Like that just shows how much he believes in what he's doing. And I really admire that.
The book that most changed your life.
I'm reading a book right now called Who Moved My Cheese? It's a really small book, and it is entirely around change, anxiety, fear, and I'm finding it really enjoyable.
What job would you want if you couldn't be a founder? Would you go back to photography? Would you go back to cinema?
I mean, if we're talking like, what if I could just close my eyes and snap my fingers and do anything?
Yes.
I mean, I honestly would like to help people. So, and I say this with a caveat of like, I really don't know. It's probably miserable, but I would almost maybe want to like get into politics or something where I could try to affect change, you know, citywide, and, you know, try to improve quality of life for people, or work with you know, do more work with charity or something. Yeah, I like building things. So I would say something where I can build something to help people make their lives better.
It can be a favorite movie, or cinematographer or filmmaker, just something in the movie industry that's your favorite thing.
Favorite movie, I have a lot of them, but I would say Apocalypse Now. It's a pretty dark movie. It's a long movie, but it's stunningly beautiful. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola, shot by a guy named Vittorio Storaro, an incredible Italian cinematographer. Amazing movie. And then there's a movie called Heart to Darkness that's actually a documentary about making Apocalypse Now. It was directed by Coppola's wife, which is also pretty awesome.
Your first entrepreneurial endeavor, it can be a company idea, a college initiative, or anything.
Sure. When I was a kid, I had a neighbor who had a candle making business, and she was really kind and sold me some of her like beeswax and candle supplies. And I kind of built my own little candle business, kind of off the back of hers, and sold, you know, some candles to neighbors and family members.
Love that. Gotten into candles recently, so I love that.
Cool.
And then finally, the mega trend that you're most excited about. It can either be, you know, within consumer, within, you know, your previous careers as well. What's the trend that you know you're most hot to trot about right now?
Oh man, mega trend. The fact that we're moving away from skinny jeans, I guess.
You've been holding on to that one for a while, and then finally happened, and it's relieved.
Well, Mike, really appreciate the time. It's awesome to kind of hear how your various life stories and the lines drawn in reverse, so to speak, have led you to this moment now. It's been a pleasure on our end.
Awesome. Same here.
Thanks everyone for listening. You can find us at somethingnewpod.com. You can follow Steph at StephMui, MUI, on Twitter. You can follow myself, Lior, at LMushin on Twitter. Catch us again next time.
Cool. I thought it went well.